Write versus writelines and concatenated strings. So I'm learning Python. I am going through the lessons and ran into a problem where I had to condense a great many target.write into a single write, while having a \n between each user input variable, the object of write. I came up with, if I try to do, I get an error. But if I type, then it works fine. Why am I unable to use a string for a new line in write, but I can use it in writelines? Python 2.7.
Writelines expects an iterable of strings. Write expects a single string. Line 1 plus \n plus line 2 merges those strings together into a single string before passing it to write. Note that if you have many lines, you may want to use \n.join list _of lines.
Why am I unable to use a string for a new line in write, but I can use it in Writelines? The idea is the following: if you want to write a single string, you can do this with write. If you have a sequence of strings, you can write them all using Writelines. Write, arg, expects a string as argument and writes it to the file. If you provide a list of strings, it will raise an exception, by the way, show errors to us. Writelines, arg, expects an iterable as argument. An iterable object can be a tuple, a list, a string, or an iterator in the most general sense. Each item contained in the iterator is expected to be a string. A tuple of strings is what you provided, so things worked. The nature of the strings does not matter to both of the functions, i.e. they just write to the file whatever you provide them. The interesting part is that Writelines does not add new line characters on its own, so the method name can actually be quite confusing. It actually behaves like an imaginary method called write _all_of these strings sequence. What follows is an idiomatic way in Python to write a list of strings to a file while keeping each string in its own line. This takes care of closing the file for you. The construct \n.join lines concatenates, connects the strings in the list lines and uses the character \n as glue. It is more efficient than using the plus operator. Starting from the same line sequence, ending up with the same output, but using Writelines. This makes use of a generator expression and dynamically creates new line terminated strings. Writelines iterates over this sequence of strings and writes every item. Edit, another point you should be aware of. Write and readlines existed before Writelines was introduced. Writelines was introduced later as a counterpart of readlines, so that one could easily write the file content that was just read via readlines. Really, this is the main reason why Writelines has such a confusing name. Also, today, we do not really want to use this method anymore. Readlines reads the entire file to the memory of your machine before Writelines starts to write the data. First of all, this may waste time. Why not start writing parts of data while reading other parts? But, most importantly, this approach can be very memory consuming. In an extreme scenario, where the input file is larger than the memory of your machine, this approach won't even work. The solution to this problem is to use iterators only. A working example. This reads the input file line by line. As soon as one line is read, this line is written to the output file. Schematically spoken, there always is only one single line in memory, compared to the entire file content being in memory in case of the readlines/Writelines approach.
If you want to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing.